being an entrepreneur, I mean, like, it's a wild, wild west. You're constantly, facing new challenges. You can come up with the projects yourself. It's what is interesting to you, um, financially valuable to you versus what someone is telling you. So I think that just kind of like sparked so many different things within my brain that I never really thought was even possible.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Today's guest is Tae Kim, founder of the Financial Tortoise. Tae Kim is on a mission to help people achieve financial independence and security through thoughtful, sustainable strategies. As the mind behind Financial Tortoise, Tae provides straightforward, practical guidance on building wealth with a focus on simplicity and patience. Drawing from his own financial journey, including overcoming debt and building a solid foundation for his family, Tay offers a unique perspective on long term financial success without the pressure of getting rich quick. Tay's insights into money management, investing, and financial resilience have resonated with thousands who want to approach their finances with intention. His emphasis on gradual, deliberate growth is a refreshing take on the fast paced world of finance. Join us as we dive into Tae Kim's journey, explore his strategies for sustainable wealth building, and discover how his financial tortoise philosophy can help you navigate your own financial path. Well, I am super excited today to have Tae Kim, the founder of Financial Tortoise, with us today. Welcome to the show, Tae.
Thank you for having me, Larry.
Yes, it's good to see you. I know our listeners, those who are not listening through the luxury of video as well, don't have this pleasure, but it is very nice to see you as well. So, listen, we're going to talk a lot about what you're doing today with Financial Tortoise and how that kind of came to be. But our listeners, a lot of entrepreneurs, everybody's fascinated, including myself. I am very fascinated with the entrepreneurial journey. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur to up until finding or founding the Financial Tortoise?
Sure. So, just context, I run a YouTube channel called Financial Tortoise. So I've been doing it about 3 years. So I guess my journey into this entrepreneurship was a bit late. I did go to business school, but that was over 10 years ago. So previous to me starting a YouTube channel for about 20 years, I guess I worked for somebody else. I spent about a decade in corporate finance. I was a finance director before. So I was the guy in if you worked in any kind of corporate structure, the guy who came around and told everyone stop spending money, you're over your budget, you're forecasted to be under, that guy. So I did that for about 10 years, and then I came straight out of from business school into that. But previous to that, in my 20s, I spent most of my time in the military. So after I did ROTC when I was in college, and yeah, I decided I want to serve. So I spent good 4 years active duty in the Army. So yeah, I mean, so my journey into entrepreneurship was, it kind of wasn't like a direct thing that I was always like, oh, I want to start my own business. It wasn't something that you hear stories about people who became successful entrepreneurs and they're like, yeah, I was selling, like lemonade
Right.
stand when I was 9
Yeah.
years old. And I did, I sold shoes out of, my trunk when I was 12. Like I wasn't that person. I was very,
Okay.
I didn't know about entrepreneurship, so I followed a very traditional route into, the most, I guess, hierarchy-based organization there is, which is the military. And then I also, worked in a hierarchy-based organization running numbers. And then, yeah, like in my 30s, I think I started to, like my late 30s, I started to have an inkling for wanting to try something different. So that's how I kind of landed at today running a YouTube channel as a middle-aged man.
Well, listen, first and foremost, I'd be remiss. Thank you for your service. I and our listeners appreciate you serving the country and really appreciate that aspect of your life. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And, congratulations on being a first generation entrepreneur, as they say, and,
Yeah, yeah.
who knows, you may have now, and are instilling that in the next generation through your kids as they
Hmm.
watch what you're doing. So you might have turned the tide for your family and your situation as a result. But
Yeah, yeah.
one thing you talk about is getting married, and you said that getting married was a financial wake up call for you. Why was that?
Yeah, so I think uh up until so I got married right out of business school when I was 30. And up until that point in my life, I was, making these decisions that I made, the financial decisions that I made were uh the impact was solely on me. If I bought a brand new car that I couldn't afford, that payment was up to me. Any kind of liability that I added to my name, that was on me. So I guess the reason why when I got married to my wife, that it hit me a little bit harder about not being in a good financial situation, was that now it wasn't just about me. It was going to have a ripple effect upon my wife, and in the future to my kids. So I think that was really what kind of like woke me up into like, oh no, like I need to get my act together. Like I can't just make bad financial decisions and then say, okay, it's all right. Like I'll figure it out later down the line. It's like, no, like this is gonna have a ripple effect upon my family now that I am fully responsible for. So I think in that sense, that was a wake up call. I was like, okay, like it's not just about you. You have other people that you're responsible for. So time to wake up.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I know you talked about the genesis as far as serving in the military, going to business school, corporate America, and then kind of founding or starting this venture through Financial Tortoise. How did that all come to be? Like, what was the impetus that said, "Hey, this is the direction I want to go in. I'm going to set up this YouTube channel, and this is going to be the next steps of where I go."
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, like the last 10 years prior to me starting my YouTube channel, I had a very traditional corporate career. Like my aspiration when I graduated from business school was I wanted to one day be a CFO. Like my that's what I saw as kind of like, hey, I think I could be good at that. I think that seems to be like a goal and aspiration that I wanna go after. And, those were goals I had in my early 30s, and goals change because we change. And I think and it was a great career. Like I was getting, good compensation. I was working with very smart people. I was getting to solve great, like challenging problems and growing from them. But then after I had my kids, so my kids are now 8 and 11. So after my wife and I, we had our kids, I think I started to have a different aspiration that maybe, hey, I want to spend more time with him. I want a bit more freedom. And I think there was a moment I remember I was sitting at a board meeting with our CFO. And as a finance director, like my job is I run forecasts all day long. Like, we do company projections.
Hmm.
So I remember sitting there with our CFO, and she was usually the person that would present to the board members, and I would sit next to her, and she had questions regarding the numbers because my team and I, we put them together. She'd be like, "Oh, hey, what's going on with this forecast here?" And I would kind of explain to her, and then it kind of hit me at that moment. I was like, if I work really hard, I could just move one seat over 10 years from now, and then I'll be in her seat.
Hmm.
But I'm like, I'll be pretty much doing the same thing, except I'm just presenting now, and I'll have a finance director that I would be like, hey, what's wrong with this number? So I think not that that was like something that like I was horrified by. I think it just gave me a clear picture of my direction for the next 10 years. And I could kind of see the lifestyle. I could see where I was going to be. And I think it was one of the few times where I gave myself the permission to ask the question, if I could wave a magic wand and I could have a different career path, like what would that look like? Lifestyle from a just growth challenges, like what would that look like? And I was always interested in personal finance, and YouTube was just kind of a something that I enjoyed, but I never really saw it as like a serious platform. But then that's when I started to do some research around the I guess the creator world and the social media world, and I saw there could be a potential where if I could share good information with people and that could be helpful, that could be a career path, and it would give me not just flexibility, but also from a compensation perspective, I could be well compensated just as I was in my previous job. But the benefit is it would come with a lot more flexibility. So that was kind of the impetus for thinking about even changing. And now that I'm 3 years in, having switched, kind of being able to, experience the freedom, of course, the stress of being an entrepreneur, but also the freedom of being an entrepreneur. So, but that was really a big thing. I was like, hey, maybe I should, just because I decided on that goal when I was 30 years old, that doesn't mean it should be the same goal when I'm 40.
Right.
It's okay to change.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point because, right, so many people, they go to school, they get an education in a specific area, they start working in that career, and within a period of time, whether it's short or long, they start realizing maybe that this isn't, especially the longer they're in it, right? Maybe this
Hmm.
isn't really all it was cracked up to be for them. And I applaud you for kind of sitting down, level setting, and saying, hey, if I could do whatever I wanted at this point, knowing what I know now, because I didn't know it
Right.
10 plus years ago, right? Knowing what would that look like? Because I think that so many people are kind of frightened by that concept, right? They're frightened by the unknown of potentially leaving. So, I mean, was that the main and only catalyst for you, was kind of level setting and saying, "Hey, I wanted to aspire to be the CFO, but really all it is a kind of a lateral move, maybe an increase in pay, increase in responsibility, but my responsibilities are going to be very similar." I mean, that was really the driving factor, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think from a career perspective, I think that was just from a like what I will be doing as a professional, like that's what I saw clearly. And I think the other part was, as I kind of alluded to earlier, was just
Right.
lifestyle. I was, especially when my kids were a lot younger, I the time that I would get to spend time with the time that I was spending with them was very limited.
Mhm.
Like I was leave early in the morning, come back home, late at night, and then just be able to only give them, I guess, the the leftover from my
Right.
workday. And then on the weekends, I'm just trying to recover. And it wasn't like I wasn't enjoying work. It just felt like work was a priority, and I was kind of fitting my family around it. And that's where
Mhm.
and that was a narrative that I think I grew up with, and I thought that was the right way until, again, like I wanted to give myself the permission to say, like, if I could wave a magic wand, what would that look like? And then that's where, like, what if I could work? I could put the family as a priority, and then I could put the work around it. And it's like, it's not like I don't want to work. I enjoy the work. I just don't want it to be the center of my life.
I get it, and the kids grow up so fast. I talk about it all the
Right.
time that the time exponentially goes faster as they get older. It seems like it goes faster and faster and faster. So, as you were kind of drawing out this transition and looking to make this move, was it something that you said one day, "Hey, I'm resigning from this role, and now tomorrow I'm setting up this YouTube channel and running with it," or was it something that you started while you were in your corporate role and then transitioned into over time from, part-time gig to, maybe taking on more of your time to eventually
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, it's time. I have to give up this corporate job and just focus on this YouTube channel at this point."
Yeah, I would say the mindset was very gradual. So I think both my wife and we had a lot of conversations around like where do we want to be, 5, 10, 20 years from now. Clarifying where we want to go was, it was a several year long process. We started like just kind of, hinting the idea of like, hey, what if we wanted to kind of repaint the picture of what our future could be like. What would that look like? And then it's a lot of work because you have to kind of unearth a lot of your previous assumptions, or what we think we were supposed to do,
Right.
like those kind of things. That like, is it okay if we left our job? Like, and I don't know anybody who's done
Mhm.
that, right? Or like, try something different, like, who's on YouTube? It's just a bunch of kids. Like, why would I get on there? Stuff like that. So we had to kind of like unearth a lot of those things. And I think that process took probably us several years to just get to a comfortable place where we're not like cringing when we're talking about a change. We're like, hey, that could be a possibility. And I think the other aspect was like our finances. I think as we were starting to talk about, um, what if we were to make a big shift? Like, where would we want our finances to be in order for us to feel emotionally comfortable doing that? And thankfully, like after we got married, we went through a pretty rigorous process of like, I guess, financial detox. Like we had $105,000 student debt that we paid off. We followed like the Dave Ramsey snowball method, and then we became very financially literate, and we spent about 10 years just kind of building good financial habits. So we had pretty good savings rate. So we were saving, quite a bit of our income. So we just uh, adjusted our direction to say, okay, like let's see where we want our finances to be if we want to make this transition. So by the time I decided to make the move, we had about 2 years worth of just cash. That like, if I make no money from this, we are okay for 2 years. And at the same time, I wasn't telling my, company that hey, I'm walking
Right.
out, like, see ya, it was more like, hey, I'm just going to take some time off and then try some different things. And I always like to keep a back door open just in case I need to come back.
Right.
So there was a lot of contingencies that we kind of put into place. My wife, she was a registered nurse, so she also had flexibility on, going part-time or picking up shifts here and there. So we knew we had a lot of these levers that we can pull to prepare us financially. So, but it was probably like a good 5-year process from when the idea percolated to the moment that we decided to pull the trigger of just mentally preparing ourselves, financially preparing ourselves, and also knowing that once we pull the trigger, we still have contingencies that we can kind of fall back on. So I guess this is the when you're asking the question about being an entrepreneur, like we were the very like reluctant, like kind of slowly, like let's test it out and see if it works out before we
Right.
commit, because we were pretty risk averse.
Imagine a relationship where financial conversations don't feel stressful, but actually bring you joy. We've designed a guide to help you have positive, meaningful money conversations with your partner. This isn't just another budgeting tool, it's a roadmap for building trust and connection. So if you're ready to start a joyful money journey with your partner, go to mitlin.us/couplesjoy and download your free guide. Transform your financial future together starting today. I think that was a great process that you just took took us through because, and obviously it's worked for you. It's been a very good process for you and your wife to go through. And I feel like sometimes when people are going through that deliberation that we talked about earlier of,
Mhm.
hey, I'm not really juiced by what I'm doing every day. It's kind of have the time in and I'm super invested in it and I don't know how to kind of get out of it, if you will, right? And I think you bring up a great point, and I talked about in my book, Financial Planning Made Personal, because when people think
Mhm.
about like starting a business or an entrepreneurial journey, I think in many people's minds, they have to, turn it on and off like a light switch, move from this career to this career, and it's all or none. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like the way that you and your wife handle it very deliberately, having a plan in place, making sure you have the right financial habits in place, making sure you're doing it for the right reasons, making sure you have the financial support and gliding into that and
Yeah.
kind of having those contingencies and those levers. I think contingencies sometimes could be a blessing and a curse, right? Because when times get tough as an entrepreneur, you don't want to kind of just immediately fall back on that contingency. But at the same time, to have the ability to add more income income when times are tough is hugely beneficial as well. So I think the process that you described is amazing, and I'm sure our listeners will find that super helpful as well. So thank you for sharing that. Um, with YouTube being the second largest search engine, basically to Google, which is more or less the same company, right? And having more people watch there than television, what advice do you have for those people who, would like to get started? And maybe it's them as an individual, or maybe for their company, starting a YouTube channel. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so to be honest, I've been pleasantly surprised by the power of YouTube. So when I first started, I think the reason I went towards YouTube was because I knew a lot of personal finance writers, a lot of bloggers. And, usually people who go into writing about personal finance and investing are very smart individuals, like way smarter than I am. And, they could tell me about all the behind the research, like all the back end research of a 4% rule, when it works, when it doesn't work. I'm like, oh wow, like they can tell me all the steps of a backdoor Roth IRA. And like I knew there was a lot of people that were super smart. And when I first started in this kind of like, hey, could I compete in this content creation world, one of the reasons I went into YouTube was because a lot of the people that I knew, they were a little hesitant about going on camera. So a lot of them are totally fine writing, but getting on camera, putting your face out there is a whole different game.
Right.
And that's where I was like, you know what? Maybe like it's not as saturated. Maybe I'm willing to put myself in front of a camera. So maybe there's a little bit of a competitive edge. And I think I was pleasantly surprised how positive the reaction was when I first went on YouTube. And I was just sharing the same thing that I would, read about or write about. And it would just be like super boring stuff. I'm like, one of the first videos that really did well for me was I would just go through like an index fund, like a Vanguard Total Stock Market Index fund. I'm literally just kind of going through the basics of like, this is the expense
Right.
ratio, this is a composition. Let's take a look at the composition. Like, let's understand the large cap versus small cap, like stuff like that.
Almost like a video version of the fact card for the fund or the
Exactly. And I
ETF.
was like, who's gonna watch this? Like, like I don't even want to read
Right.
this. And yet people watched it because YouTube, I think in general, is starting to become the main medium of, I guess, like just media consumption. Instead of watching television, how like we all grew up watching, channel 2, channel 4, channel 6, like this YouTube is now the place.
Right.
Like I think I read some stats about how this year YouTube has surpassed Netflix as the most watched platform on television.
Wow.
So people are watching YouTube on television. So I think there's just this huge, massive, like, larger trend of people moving towards YouTube. So I would, recommend anybody who's thinking about, hey, I want to whether get on YouTube because I wanted to, or whether you want to create a content business. YouTube, I think, is an excellent platform. I still feel like there's a lot of niche within YouTube that hasn't been exploited yet. So, and this is another thing that a lot of people kind of, I think when I talk to people about YouTube, people get confused about it is like, oh, like I heard that you're supposed to do stuff like what Mr. Beast does, or like, Mark Rober, these like, but the thing is, there's billions of people watching YouTube. Everyone's different.
Right.
So that's the crazy thing about YouTube is that it slices out people into different categories. So you don't have to be like Mr. Beast because those are watched by like my son, 11-year-olds, right? So then your style, you shouldn't follow that. And then so you can come up with your own style, your own messaging, and there is an audience for that. And right now people are coming towards it. So I think it's just an excellent platform for people who want to, whether, it's a message that you want to put out or you want to create a business that's centered around content, or you just want to do a marketing for your existing business. I think it's just an excellent platform.
Yeah, sounds like it is. And sounds like, most businesses or individuals, whether you're a service or a product, really should be there because,
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
eyeballs that are interested in what you're doing are there, and you don't have to
Yeah. Yeah.
replicate.
Yeah.
Be your own. As my friend Matt Halloran from Proudmouth, who produces our show, says, "Be your own loud,"
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And YouTube allows you to do that. So, for you? How is being an entrepreneur, especially somebody who's come from corporate America, right? How has being an entrepreneur flipped how you think about your life? Has it changed since being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really challenged me in a lot of ways that I wasn't used to. So, uh, I think it's a very entrepreneurship. I think the pathway is it's an excellent personal growth opportunity because I think it challenges in such multiple different ways. So like one of them is like just I guess like creativity. So like I never like I wasn't like I didn't buy my first camera until I decided that I wanted to start a YouTube channel. So then like this wasn't until like I was 40. I was like, let me see how this camera thing works. I wasn't the person that, was like, oh, I'm interested in this camera. I always wanted to be on YouTube. It was kind of like reluctantly like, hey, I think this could be a niche that I could, make a space in. But cameras, people who love cameras, I think from the get-go just have a really great creative mindset. They look at a picture, they look at a movie, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like I see how they're doing this." Like I wasn't that
Right.
person. Like I was a numbers guy. I just like ran spreadsheets all day long and made PowerPoints.
Well, maybe you were creative with the numbers, you know?
Maybe, yeah, maybe, yeah. So then now it's like I'm trying to like figure out a way to merge the two of like how do I talk about these numbers in a way that is visually appealing or just communicated in a way is easily digestible. Like stuff like that I never really thought about that I was like, so it stretched me a lot of ways and just creatively, like just it just grew me in an area that I never really thought that I was even interested in or I thought I had a talent in. So yeah, I mean the entrepreneurship journey I think is hard, but I think is one of the for me so far, it's been very satisfying in just one, I think from a growth perspective I just talked about, but at the same time, the flexibility.
Mhm.
Like, before my routines were pretty set. I mean, I could see my whole calendar for a year. Like, we had projections, we had quarterly board meetings that I had to go to prepare for. So like I could literally map out on a week, like on a, Tuesday of November 2nd, what I'm working on.
Right.
Like we're starting to run, collect the numbers, we're running the scenarios, we're doing all of these. And November 8th, we're putting them on slides, November 9th, like all of those things. Being an entrepreneur, I mean, like, it's a wild, wild west. You're
Mm.
constantly, facing new challenges. You can come up with the projects yourself. It's what is interesting to you, financially valuable to you versus what someone is telling you. So I think that just kind of like sparks so many different things within my brain that I never really thought was even possible.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's, even though you didn't feel like you had it prior, it feels like moving into this entrepreneurial journey for you is also really either reignited or really lit the fire under that creative side of your brain. Because it sounds like it wasn't really something that was being regularly used, but now it sounds like it is because it's opened up these doors to allow you to use it.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed in my brain. And then so I'm like, I gotta dig something up there. Like what's down there, Like so but it's been great. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. So, why do you think, because, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine this is tied into the name of the channel, Financial Tortoise, right? Why do you think that it's so important for people to understand that life is not a race?
When we try to do things too quickly, I think it just counterintuitive to I think what we see around us that defines things that are just lasting and sustainable. So I think when you look around us, like, you see an oak tree that it's strong today because it took its time, years to grow. And then you see any kind of, like bean sprout that grew up in a day and then it doesn't last. It just flops right over because it didn't have the time to build that foundation. So the reason why I think it's important is just because I think when we take things slow and steady, it really gives us the time to learn. It gives us time to build a foundation. And I think it is just what works. And for me, like in my 20s, like I got caught up so much on the whole rush of I gotta make, money quickly. I gotta get rich quickly because that's what we see. Like, we see this 25-year-old driving a Lamborghini and we're like, wow, like that guy's rich. I remember like I used to valet when I was in college, and I remember like, seeing these people drive up and, these super nice cars. And then, like I was always impressed. Like I had this mindset that, oh, like this guy driving a nice car must be rich. And this young guy driving a nice car must be like super cool and super rich. Not, realizing that most of the times, what we perceive is probably stacked in a house of cards and it could, fall over at any moment. So I spent a lot of like my energy, I think, on trying to pursue these hacks of trying to get rich. You read these books about like, oh, you gotta go, you gotta start getting into real estate, zero down, like zero down, like other people's money, or like, hey, like get into this business idea. And then, this guy became, was able to like start making $100,000 a month. And then we start to like spend so much of our energy versus if you just study, millionaires, like Dr. Thomas Stanley, he wrote that book, The Millionaire Next Door. And then if you look at the stats of actual millionaires, like they all followed a very slow and steady path. Like they built a career capital, they lived below their means, they invested, and they gave it time. And then that's how they became millionaires. And that's where I think what I realized in my 30s, I was like, oh, wow, like I spent so much of my energy just pursuing after these get rich quick schemes. And I was studying the wrong things. I was pursuing the wrong things. So I think, yeah, I think that's how I came up with the name Slow and Steady, like the simplest book there is, the fable of tortoise and the hare.
Right.
Like you just gotta be like the tortoise, but we all want to, we can't help ourselves but gravitate towards the hare because he looks cooler.
Right. Yeah.
But then, let's be the boring tortoise and just go slow and steady, and we will eventually win in the end.
I love that. And I think you point out some great nuggets in there. One is, you talked about the young people driving the nice cars, thinking they were rich. And, we've had Brian Portnoy on our show from Shaping Wealth and talking about the difference between rich and wealthy, right? Two different things, right? So I think that that's important. And like you said, I mean, slow and steady. And I think the third thing is we have a tendency, unfortunately, as humans, human nature is to kind of compare and contrast ourselves against others. And, we're not in a race with all these other people. We're just kind of in a way, just creating a life for ourselves and our family that works for us. And just because somebody else has something that may not, and how they got it may not work into our life or lifestyle, right?
Right.
Which are
Yeah.
all great points I think you bring out. And we love what you're doing at Financial Tortoise. So keep up the
Thank you.
slow and the steady and the good work there, Tay. Appreciate it. So, we end each of our shows asking each of our guests the same question because we're all about joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset, and that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Yeah, so right now, for me, one of the most important things is my family. So my wife and my two kids that are 8 and 11, they're it's that fun stage right now
Yeah.
where they're not in diapers, but they're not like, in the high school, they're too cool for me stage yet. So I want to try to cherish this moment as much as possible. So I mean, one of the things that I really cherish is being able to have the freedom to, wake up before the kids, and then be able to greet them when they first wake up, and then be there for them, and then also be able to have the flexibility to, have a cup of coffee with my wife and just kind of map out the day. What do we want to try to accomplish? So I think that's what I really cherish, and I'm very thankful for the YouTube, the entrepreneurial journey that's allowed me the flexibility to have that room in my life to do that right now.
Yeah,
So yeah,
amazing.
very thankful for that.
Amazing. And, Tay, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. And I think I know where this is going to go, but I'm going to ask anyway. But if people want to learn more about you, learn more about the Financial Tortoise, connect with you, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can go to my YouTube channel, financialtortoise.com, and that's where I upload videos on a weekly basis. I also have an Instagram channel that Instagram that I recently started. And Larry, I think I shared with you a little bit earlier about how it was one of our bucket lists to do a world travel.
Yes.
So my family and I we've been traveling the world. So we spent about 3 months in Europe, and we're head over to Asia um, in our next leg. So I post a little bit of our, the more personal side of our family picture, the places we've been. So, if you want to learn more of the nitty gritty, like money stuff, go to my YouTube channel. If you want to connect with me a little bit more personally, go to my Instagram channel, and then you can see me there.
Awesome. Well, Tay, listen, thanks again for taking out the time and joining us. Thanks again as well. We don't take it lightly for your service. It's greatly appreciated by us and our listeners. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Larry.
I want to thank Tae Kim for being a guest on the Mitlin Money Mindset. As his channel title, Financial Tortoise, suggests, we need to take a slow and steady path towards financial freedom. Tae has found a great deal of joy shifting from the corporate world to the entrepreneurial one. His dedication to helping educate families on how to view finances is refreshing. Tae is clearly passionate about using his creative mind to help others exercise their financial muscles. Tae Kim and Financial Tortoise can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.